Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Fred Carroll, author of The Adventures of Left Eye Lazy Book 3, Meetin' Maggie Mayhem. Fred, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you, Paul? Nice to meet you.
You too, my friend. We're happy to have you on the show. Are you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's get started.
All right, Fred. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Well, one thing I tell everybody is to learn how to take criticism and how to develop a thicker skin, because you got to write your story to the best of your ability, and you're never going to please everyone. It's very political in that stance. So I say write it, release it, then write the next one, and I promise that you'll get better with every book you write and release. You're going to make mistakes. You're a human being. You got to learn to accept those mistakes and try to get better.
Well, and the main thing too, right? Done is better than perfect.
Right. It definitely is. I don't strive for perfection because I don't think I could reach it. I strive to stay within my framework and my abilities, and I try to tell a great story. And I think that's what a writer is. Somebody that could tell a story.
Absolutely. Well, what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Well, I think not everybody agrees with this, but I think the market has been flooded by bad writers, and that Amazon has created a monster that has zero rules. Anybody could call themselves an author by writing anything, and there's so much bad stuff out there. But at the same time, it's filled with unknown, amazing writers who just don't understand how to market themselves properly. So I think it's very difficult to figure out who the future writers of the world are and who aren't. There's just too many of them that are calling themselves writers.
Well, and I think the other thing too, it's not only the writing, but the fact that there are people out there, and this still blows my mind, especially as a publisher myself, is the fact that there are people out there that actually will publish a book and not have the dang thing edited, and that just blows my mind. No matter what you have, no matter what the quality, have someone edit that dang thing, because it just blows my mind.
Yeah, it's true, and I understand. I own my own publishing company, so I write under my publishing company, obviously. But I also have other writers that come on, and I try to find indie authors that are not financially able to do it. So, and that's a problem. Is there's people that just because they call themselves an editor doesn't make them a good editor.
Right. And
there's so many out there in Facebook land. I'm not a huge fan of the Facebook groups and all that stuff.
Me too.
Because the author gets, I understand it. I have an authors group. I appreciate them as fans.
Yeah.
But they're not the only people I need to seek. I need to find the people I don't know to learn who I am, not the people that I know. I expect them to be there. It's like your brother or sister, your mother or your father. I expect them to buy the book. I need to find the person that hasn't bought my book and how I get them to buy my book.
Well, in regards to buying books, I'd like to transition down to marketing. And that is, would you please share with us a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launches that has worked well?
Yeah, so I always say that, obviously, the more money you have, ads do work, but not everybody has that budget, and most people don't have the budget, quite honestly, just because it's just not there. But I also see authors that don't study the marketing side of it, so they don't know how to do it. They don't understand analytics. They don't understand how to getting yourself noticed is key. Yeah. People have to know who you are, and it's content. That's all I tell people. You have to write stuff, write for other people, write short stories, novelettes, novellas, screenplays, and just keep writing. But you can't just rely on Facebook and you have to utilize the other platforms that are available. And that's right down to Pinterest. Pinterest is huge now. You got to sell your soul and your personal social life away and learn what works by doing it. But Google Analytics, you got to understand what Amazon wants. You have to do the work. That's the most important thing. Figure it out. YouTube has so many videos available to people and teaching them the rules and where to put a hashtag. People don't even understand hashtags.
Yeah.
You have to learn what they are. And I teach people on my apostrophes video casts that, like in Facebook hates hashtags. They just hate them. So the way to go around that is, if you're an author, put it in your comment below. Don't put it in your post. Put it below in a comment, and that'll circumvent that analytic side of things. And that's just one of the many things. But there's lessons out there to be taught.
Well, you just brought up something very interesting, and believe it or not, we've done 410 episodes, and you're the first person that's brought this up, Fred. So you're telling us that hashtags do not work on Facebook.
Well, they do work, but they don't work like in Instagram. You have to utilize the 30 hashtags on an Instagram post. You can't use 30 hashtags on a Facebook post. You will get lost in la la land.
Yep.
They'll disappear, make you disappear, and you don't even understand how fast they could do that, because Facebook works off the platform that the more, like, if your friends, that's why you want your friends to like it and your mom to like it. The more likes you get, they'll throw it back into almost like it just keeps repeating itself, but more people will see it. But you have to be very specific with your hashtags. And maybe I use 7 to 10 per post on a Facebook, because it's still, you could still utilize it because it's still a searchable item. But you have, like in Instagram, you have to use the 30. 30 is king. And you have to learn how to hide those. I mean, I use a thing called Buffer. I don't know if you ever heard of buffer.com.
We use it all the time, my friend.
That's what I use, a Buffer. And I think people should look into it. I'm not working for them or anything, and I don't advertise for them, but it works well for me because it gives me a system where I'm writing, I'm marketing, and I pick those times. You have to choose what works for you and fit it in. Marketing is king.
Well, and you bring up a great point, too, about the hashtags on Instagram. So every time that you do a post, you are always using 30 hashtags, correct?
I'm always using 30. Sometimes I'll use, once again, you have to try it and see what works, see what gets more eyes on you. But sometimes I'll use 20, but then you could use 10 in a comment. You could put hashtags in comments too, and it could recycle something and get it flowing again. It all depends on what you're aiming at. You just can't always be selling. That's another thing I try to teach people. Your job isn't to, ultimate job is to get them. I try to put it towards like dating. It's very similar to dating. You don't just get the girl and marry the girl. You have to woo her. And the same thing you have to do with people. They're just human beings. So interact with your fans and get them to you have to get them to a landing page. Make it as simplistic for them to buy your book as possible. You can't send them to, I hate takeovers. I don't know if you know what a takeover is in Facebook for indie authors, when you are it's like a party but you're talking to the same people. The same people that already know who you are. Nobody new is coming in, because how do you invite a stranger that you never met into the group? So it just becomes rinse and repeat. And people get too close to these Facebook friends where they're telling you how great you are. But it's 10 people. You got to hit 10,000 people if you want to make it as a writer. And do it full time, of course.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
So, favorite book is, it's in general, but I'm a big Stephen King fan, and my favorite book by him would be The Stand. And I've read it a few times, and what I learned from it is, one thing I've learned from Stephen King in general is, he taught me the rules of writing just by reading, because I believe reading and writing is the only solution to getting better. The more you read, the more you write, and just keep going. Bad books, good books, they all teach you a lesson. But he taught me that I have to learn the rules. You have to know the rules of writing before you could break them. You have to break the rules because you got to have your voice. Otherwise, everybody's just writing the same paragraph structure and stuff. Structure is so important, and creating your voice. So he also taught me about characters, because I believe he's just a great character developer. And it's shown in my skill set now. So I thank Mr. King.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Okay, one of my favorite quotes is, "A man does not know whose hand will stroke from him the last bubbles of his life. That alone should make him kinder to strangers." And that is by an author and a friend of mine and a surgeon, Dr. Richard Selzer, who's sadly passed on now. But without him, I am not even an author today, without this gentleman. He was one of my best friends, and he taught me so much.
Well, Fred, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
I'm available through all social medias, from Pinterest to Instagram to Twitters. But if they just search Fred, and that's with 2 D's, and my last name's Carroll with 2 R's, 2 L's. So if you just remember the rule of 2, so it's FREDDCARROLL, you should find me popping up everywhere. You could search for me as the Double D Network and Apostrophes, a writer series on YouTube.
Well, Fred, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it very much.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.